Aloha. So I tried to make this video once and I just had too much to say, and so it ended up being way too long. So I'm gonna try to do it a little different way. We'll just kind of let the video play and pause it, and then I'll cut it all up and edit it up. And I might insert some little clips from what I recorded before, if I miss anything, but hopefully I can condense it all down a lot more. So today I want to go through a video by askquestions.tv is the YouTube channel, and it's called Thoughts on Universalism. And it is a pastor from Portland, Oregon. Pretty amazing church up there. He's a great guy. He has, by whatever the word is, by extension, has helped me a lot because of who he's helped and how they've formed me. So I got a lot of respect for him, and I appreciate him a lot. But in this subject, this video is pretty bad, and so today I won't be arguing for universalism, or I won't be providing an apology for it, but instead I will be, I guess, keeping the conversation going. What this video basically serves to bring about is removing universalism from an orthodox conversation on the eschaton, and I don't think that's right, and I think it's harmful. There's a group of stuff with that I think it's important to grapple with this, to grapple with Apokatastasis, with the reconciliation of all things, and universal salvation, and how there can be an orthodox grappling with this, how it is not just a debate between eternal conscious torment and annihilationism, that there is a third argument or option or potential. And so I just want to make sure that people are actually posing questions that have to do with universalism, and actually are tough questions, or are questions that only point to universalism. Because what we'll find here is a lot of the stuff that he says are arguments that I could use against eternal conscious torment or annihilationism. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully take two is better than one.
Yeah, the question is about universalism. How do you understand salvation that everybody kind of gets in?
Quick note. This is going to be long. Quick note. The pay attention to his framing of this. I guess I'll say this will cut it all down, because I won't have to say as much if I say this. At the very end, he reveals that he is basically just talking about neoliberal, modern, secular Christendom, Greasy Grace. Like, that's what he is speaking about here, is the universalism of late that is not it's not about love or about theology or about metaphysics or philosophy. It's about emotions and wanting not just it's a blanket, like, nope, that's harsh or that's whatever, and so I can't grapple with that. I can't believe that just because it's not gentle and, all inclusive and immediate or a given or whatever, to where it's not actually, it's against that, and it's not against, Origen or Gregory of Nyssa or Maximus the Confessor or Clement or a whole group of people that have actual arguments for this stance. And so you can see that with the way he phrases certain things, you can tell the way he is framing this whole thing. And he does it a lot. And that's one of my biggest problems, is that it just comes off as universalism is a ridiculous, neoliberal, modern thing. And he'll even say in a sec that it's not modern, that it's ancient. And he'll call it a heresy just right off the bat, which which I would say he's right. If he's talking about a neoliberal, atheistic Christendom universalism, which is more like a Unitarian universalism, that's just it doesn't, all roads lead to him. You could, whatever you're worshiping, it's actually worshiping God, and that's not what apokatastasis is. There's a lot, so we'll keep going through.
One, I would say that's not a new philosophy at all. It's a very ancient sort of heresy, which is a huge question. But the good news is I have 8 minutes and 50 seconds to answer it. Here's how I would see it. The only way you can get to universalism is by reducing Christ to a mechanism. So when Jesus says, "I'm the way, I'm the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father but through me," I have to depersonalize that and make Jesus just the mechanism through which everyone comes to faith.
So here he's talking about, like I said, he's talking about neoliberalism. He's not talking about actual historic apokatastasis. It's not helpful. It's not very helpful. It's a given, obvious, no crap, this isn't true, because it's not even consistent with the scriptures or with whatever. It's not even a consistent argument within itself, to where, the historic or orthodox argument for universal salvation, universal reconciliation, is self-sustaining and, in my opinion, can be derived from a sola scriptura view. But you don't even need to just stop there. There's church fathers, and there's philosophy and metaphysics, as I was saying before. There's a lot of reasons to arrive at this conclusion. And it in no way requires turning Christ into a mechanism. And I would argue that eternal conscious torment and annihilationism more so turn Christ into a mechanism. Maybe not inherently, but in practice, it definitely appears that way, because it becomes about fire insurance. It becomes about not going to hell. The whole point of this life is to be saved from hell. And it renders Christ a mechanism. So this is what I was saying earlier of he makes arguments that he is beholden to as well, that his view is beholden to. Not only beholden to, but even more so is beholden to. There's interesting ironic points that he makes that I would say are actually they actually speak against his view and are supportive of an apokatastasis view. That being one of the main things with that he'll get to is justice and his perception of justice. And he kind of gets lost in that whole argument. But we'll get to that.
No matter what. The other thing that it betrays is that when we say God is love, that what we mean by that is whatever I think love is.
So this is where he starts to get into that of if you want to use this argument that we don't understand love and that I want love to be my version of love. That's why I believe in or hold, to hopeful universalism, is because of my not only limited but like wrong view of love. If that's an argument you want to make, then we don't know anything. We have no idea what love is. If this is true, if love is so nebulous and hidden and mysterious that we cannot comprehend how making someone damning someone to an eternity of torture, the worst torture, and just unending, knows no limits, knows no bounds, and just never ends. If that is a loving act, then we have zero comprehension of what love actually is, of what the good actually is, of what beautiful actually is. And we don't understand what God is doing here, I would say as well. And there is, I am a hopeful universalist. I hold this with my hand up and an open palm. I'm not clinging to this. It is just the place that I've come to that it's what makes sense. But at the same time, there's other things like the God honoring our will, human will, our decision to choose. Love, that this is a whole other side of what, for love to be love, it has to be free to some extent. We have to be able to choose this stuff. And so there has to be a choice. It has to be uncoerced and unmanipulated and unforced. We are not slaves. We are not robots. We are humans. We're being turned into humans. But I think that, you lose the plot on what love is very quickly if you go this route. It sounds convenient, and there is some truth to it for sure that we don't understand fully. To the extent that I will grant and I grapple with, we might not understand love, and we might not understand a lot of stuff, and we might not understand the importance and the gravity of human will and of freely choosing, because we're pretty, being fallen creatures, we're pretty oppressed already, and so that's a whole universalism argument as well. But I just this talking about love here is, it's again he's breaking a bridge that falls upon himself as well. So
And the truth is, the fact that God is love distinguishes his love from my type of love. So I want universalism to be true. When people say that, I want universalism to be true because I don't want anyone to go to hell.
Again, with the framing. His framing is not, I believe that universalism is true. His framing is that to believe in universal salvation, the way that you're coming to it is I want universal salvation to be true. Not like every other facet of the faith that I arrived at this conclusion, searching through the scriptures, in communion with the Holy Spirit that indwells within me. It's just assumed that this is an emotional appeal, and I just want it to be this way. Remember this when he gets a little bit later on, when he starts talking about justice and what he sees as justice and what he wants to happen when he's wronged. Just remember what he's talking about with love, and with his version of love and God's version of love being different. And what he desires out of retribution, and calls it justice. It's a similar kind of thing.
I don't think you believe that.
And on that point, the whole I don't think you believe that. There's, this is, a bit of a shout out to Luke Thompson, but and I guess David Bentley Hart, I think he talks about it a lot, but if you truly believed in eternal conscious torment, if you believed that outside of Christ, which, universalists will claim as well, outside of Christ. But if you think that people will be doomed to eternal, like if you really grapple with this, eternal, unceasing, unending, forever, torment, torture, the worst pain and suffering, unceasingly. If you actually believed this, you wouldn't stop ever preaching and seeking to save people. You wouldn't have a dull moment. You wouldn't have selfish desires that you instead get lost in. You probably wouldn't have kids. Would you really risk letting your son or daughter end up there? Like, is it really worth that risk? Is that risk reward actually worth it? And is it wise or responsible of you to allow that possibility? Especially in this world when, who knows how good of a chance it is that someone would become a Christian or not. What the odds are of that. It's not a good game.
Because it's the equivalent of saying, I want the person who molested my child to not be judged.
There's a word he uses there that I don't want that person to be judged. The use of the word judged kind of changes it, or kind of saves himself in this. But the whole Christian ethos is realizing that you're getting what you don't deserve, and that you're not getting what you do deserve. Like that's what being in Christ is.
Right? Like you wouldn't be okay with that. You want justice and you want judgment.
Where's that coming from? Where does that desire and where is that perception of justice coming from? You want vengeance, and you want someone else to suffer like you suffered. Your flesh cries out for this. Sure. Yeah, totally. I get that. This is not Christ-like. This is not the fruit of the Spirit. This is not righteousness or holiness. My desire is for redemption and renewal and healing and growth and maturity. in love. And so with love being the background and the foreground and the above and the below, with tough love, the topic of tough love, I got a video on tough love. It has to be about wanting to benefit that person. When you bring tough love, it is not venting. It's not, go watch that video because there's a lot there. But it has to be about, I want this person to grow and become their full potential. That's what negative love does. What a negative blessing does is yes, it is negative, but it brings about a good fruit or a good end. Wanting someone to die or to whatever because of their crimes or because of how they wronged you, it's for you. It's selfish. It's not for them. It's not. And so this posturing is just it's the opposite.
You do. I want it when someone cuts me off on the freeway.
That's your example. Is someone cutting you off on the freeway and your reactionary reaction, your fleshly response is the beau ideal? Really? That's what you're holding up as? Well, obviously, universal whatever is ridiculous because we deeply have a sense for wanting justice. Yeah, it ain't it.
I mean, I want to judge people.
But you're not the judge. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, read James. Read the book of James. Like, you are not the judge. Chapter 2 and chapter 4. He talks about it in both of them. You are not the judge. You can't judge. You are ill-equipped to judge.
When if someone comes in and takes your life savings and lies to you and you're left with nothing, you want that person to pay.
And it's not good. That's not a good thing to want them to pay. Like this is sin nature. This is what Christ came to do away with. This is the opposite of how Christ acted and why he was so profound and why he was perfect and how he was able to fulfill the law. Like, it's the opposite of being this way.
You want justice.
You want justice. That's not justice. That's not justice. That's retribution. That's vengeance.
The issue really is that you want to be the judge. So you want to determine who goes to heaven and who goes to hell.
You can't, I don't know how you can get outside of that statement. If that's what you're saying that universalists believe, then how do infernalists or annihilationists, how are they not playing the same game of wanting to decide who goes and who doesn't when arguing against universal salvation, that the victory will be complete and all-encompassing? Who are you to say that it won't be that way? Why do you get to be the judge?
And which is sin in you. So when you have a God that says, I'm perfect and I'm good, and I will be judge, then you have to take that and realize that he is also a God of love. And there are times when the most loving thing to do is to judge evil.
Is to judge evil. So this is something I missed in my first trying to record this. What he just did there was, and maybe this is, points against Calvinism and what Luke would call a POS theology. But he conflated the evil of sin and of our flesh and of all of that with the image bearer, with the person. Those are two different things. When you're saying to judge evil, and you're throwing the person in there, and you're saying they are evil identity wise, on that level, it's not good, and it's clearly wrong, but it's also not good, and it just doesn't work. You can't. It's a convenient thing if you don't pick up on it, but as soon as you hear the difference between sin in evil, you hear sin and sinner. You see the evil and the image bearer. Those can be divided and need to be divided when you're talking about judging evil.
And you will think that's good on that day.
The judgment of evil will be good. To see people, persons, souls being destroyed or being tortured, that is a different thing than seeing the destruction of evil from this cosmos, as righteousness fills its place.
You won't look at evil and go, oh, it's so unjust, it's so unfair, it's so unloving, right, that people who commit rampant genocide would be judged. That's so unloving. We would never say that.
So he's going to an extreme here to try to appeal to emotion, ironically. And it's a subtle posturing of putting himself, of distancing himself and his sin and his wickedness from that of the obviously way worse, and someone who should definitely be judged, someone who committed genocide. Like, that is, yes, obviously that is a substantial sin and a great evil. But who are you? Like, what is this scale you're talking about? Reality doesn't work that way. And to hold that up, it is telling to me that that's your example, that that's your device, your framing device to get across what you're trying to get across. And you're also you're conflating the sin with the image bearer. There is a level of this stems from the foundation of dirty rags, filthy rags, not being paired with also being the beloved. Like, you have to have both of those things to have a healthy theology or a healthy epistemology of humanity, or whatever that is. Because without both of those, you lose sight. Like, if you just think we're the beloved image bearers, and you squint away the filthy rags side of it, you end up kind of in what he's talking about, what he's going against, the neoliberal, the more atheistic Christendom, Greasy Grace kind of thing. But if you only have the filthy rags side of things, you miss the whole reality of who we are and why God loves us, and that he did a good thing in making us. And that, yes, there is definitely, you bring the two together and you see that there is progress to go. But despite our current fallen state and wickedness and whatnot, we were very good. We were meod tov, or tov meod, in the garden when we were created. Like, we were designed, geniusly designed.
And so the first hurdle is this idea that you can't be loving and judgmental. And the truth is that it's love that makes you judge.
So another side of this, he's only speaking against neoliberalism. He's only speaking against perennialism, against all religion is correct, that kind of thing. If you look at the, Orthodox version of Apokatastasis, like, it talks about you're gonna go to hell. You're gonna experience that. You have to be perfected. You can't. It won't suffice to keep your wickedness, any trace of it, and so it must be burned away in refinement's fire. There will be judgment, and there will be, a painful experience. And there's a possibility that's not a painful experience, but it would seem that it would be, the way that scriptures talk, that this process of perfection is going to be painful, just as it is in this life, So he's not actually arguing against legitimate apokatastasis. He's arguing against modern neoliberalism, and it's unfortunate because it's to the uncritical viewer, this is just, it's one and the same. Yeah.
And it's your love for your kid, your love for your own life, your love for whatever. So God has not only the right to judge, but it's his love that moves him to judge. And on that day of judgment, there will be justice, and we will agree like that's a good thing.
What is justice, though? Is justice redemption and restoration, or is justice revenge and retribution? Yeah, that's the question to you, viewer, and to McKinley.
We'll be grateful for that. And we won't be given the stick to judge. He will.
Especially not just justice, but final justice. On the day of the Lord, what will justice look like? Will it be retribution, or will it be restoration and redemption?
The second thing is that somehow we think if this God is judgmental and judges sin, but he's also exclusive, that's an obstacle, and so people will reject the gospel on the basis of Jesus is too exclusive if he's the only way to heaven.
It's not about being exclusive. This is, again, just a neoliberal point that he's making. With actual apokatastasis, it's not about it being too exclusive. It's about, a lot of it is about who God is. Not just like he's loving and like, he's omnipotent. He is the creator of the cosmos, the designer and fashioner and sustainer. He is who, in him, we live and breathe and have our being. To say that for sure there is no way he can arrange it so that everyone is saved. Like, I don't know. That seems a little blasphemous, and just a statement too far to be able to make that claim. I don't know why you would want to make that claim. And so I get, again, I'm a hopeful universalist, and so I hold this with an open palm. I'm not like a David Bentley Hart and some others that I know that are, if it isn't apokatastasis, then I don't want anything to do with this God kind of thing. Like, for me, it's not that. For me, it is, I still have that open hand, but he is all powerful. And the scriptures tell us that, like, 2 Peter 3, like, he is not slow in the way that we count slowness. He's, hugely patient, that all of us would be saved. That, yeah. So there's so many arguments for this that he's not actually addressing, and he's just going for the low-hanging fruit that is like adjacent. It's not even that relevant. It's universalism adjacent, modern universalism, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, it's not a good argument.
And the truth is that's true. That's true. And so God did not come, die on the cross, raise from the dead, ascend into heaven to make people nice and to not tick people off.
No, he did it to make them righteous, to save everyone, to rescue the world, to oh man.
And in our mindset, we think that's the ultimate goal. If everyone liked Jesus and thought he was cool, then everyone would believe. That's not true. And so the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it's the power of God. I think the subtle belief underneath that is that we look arrogant to believe that somehow our way is the right way.
It's not that the way makes you arrogant. It's the posture you hold yourself and then others in. And it's a subtle thing that you did, but it's a subtle posturing of I'm not as bad as these other people, and compared to them, I deserve salvation, is the presupposition of what you said earlier. Which, yeah.
I know the church is guilty of arrogance, but my belief is I am a desperate sinner, and I have complete solidarity with every murderer, thief, horrible sinner in the world at the cross. Like, we equally are separated from God.
And what were we just talking about with justice and with wanting them to pay and with that making universalism ridiculous?
So that it's complete humility that recognizes our salvation.
And if it's an equal thing, why would it be a greater, task? Why would it be such a big deal if everyone got saved? If you could be saved and everyone's equal, and it's available for you, and you had the wherewithal, the grace you were given the grace to accept that and to yeah, it's I don't know how you can square these things.
So in the whole exclusivity camp, I think it's there because ultimately we think Jesus would be more popular if he was more tolerant.
So with exclusivity, something I say that is, it's kind of funny, but I think it's also true, strangely enough, is that Calvinism somehow, I don't know how this happens, but somehow Calvinism is like the most natural, and it doesn't seem this way. You would think it's the opposite end of the spectrum, and most people talk about it like they are opposite ends of the spectrum. But Calvinism is, the posture of Calvinism affords the easiest place to be at and to step into universalism, to Apokatastasis. One main thing is one thing that you only have to change this is that only the elect are saved. That's a huge Calvinist tenet. And the only shift you have to do to go from Calvinist to Universalist is just claiming, or is just seeing, all are elect. As soon as you make that jump, it clicks, and you see oh yeah, no, this is totally possible. But until then, yeah, it's a weird opposite, seemingly opposite, yet there's it's easier to get to here from here than it is to get from here or whatever. It's strange in that way.
And the reality is, it's not true. And really, it's not about popularity. It's about salvation and that love relationship. And so you can't reduce, if you reduce Christ to a mechanism that says the whole world gets saved even if they don't know Jesus.
Even if they don't know Jesus, like that's not a good faith argument against universalism. That's a good faith argument against neoliberalism, maybe. But it's just, this is not what is taught in Apokatastasis. It has to be through Christ. Your righteousness has to exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. That doesn't go away.
Then you unravel the whole of Scripture, the whole of New Testament theology.
It comes off, what it comes off as is the prodigal brother. This attitude is a very much so a prodigal brother of like, what do you mean I was here. I was saved. I chose you. I didn't bail to the, Yeah. That's an interesting lens to look at this through of the, not the exact story, but the posture, the spirit that the older brother had in the prodigal son story. Reminds me of this, at least.
And the funny thing to me, in the controversies surrounding it, the current ones, is Jesus himself is the biggest propagator of preaching hell than anybody else in the Bible. So the cool, passive, hippie Jesus also has this other streak that it feels to me that in popular Christian culture, we're starting to try to figure out how to apologize for that.
I feel like we've spent, how old is this video? 9 years ago. Even still, I feel like we spent the last century doing that, and now, well, I guess there is the neoliberalism side that, are definitely more prone to this error. But I think there's been a long time of not taking Jesus at his word and not grappling with what he says, and that we've been moving back into it. So I think you could argue both of those things.
And we apologize for it by weaving around some very blatant statements instead of saying, I don't know, he freaks me out too. You got to deal with Jesus. I think about, John chapter 2, his first miracle, he turns water into wine, which we all think is great. He made 180 gallons of wine for people who had already been partying for a week. And then he goes in, pulls out a whip, and tears up the temple. And if I'm one of the 12, I'm thinking to myself, I'm probably like stepping to the side a little bit, like, I don't know.
I don't think this is the argument. I don't think you're making the argument you think you're making. It's a bit of I could just poke at both of those examples, but the idea of Jesus working a crazy miracle, turning water into wine, and amazing wine at that, and then during a time of occupation and like borderline diaspora, mixed with your a heavy corruption in your religious leadership. During that time, you have these guys who are following who they think is the Messiah, the Mashiach, and he turns the tables, and he clears the temple of idolatry and sin. I'm pretty sure I'm sticking closer to him. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sure he's the Messiah. He has finally come. So I don't know.
That is a little too much wine. A couple bottles would have been sufficient, but 180 gallons, these people are already half lit.
How many people were there? Like, it's just, this is not a great example.
And then he's tearing up the temple, and they're like, who's he?
The Messiah. Like, that's like, I don't know. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you would do. I guess I just see the world a bit differently than Rick.
I think the disciples saw a Jesus that was radically untamed, very offensive, and they gave their lives for him. And today we're afraid of that Jesus.
I don't know if I would call Jesus offensive. He definitely offended people a lot. And I think that is more of like, yeah, I just think that that's a nuanced or whatever the word is, semantics. But I don't think he was offensive, because that was not his spirit and that was not his goal. Neither of those things was to be offensive. It was to be loving. Like, everything he did was out of love, and it was for our sake. And because of our state, some stuff was offensive to people, and people got offended by certain things. But it was not. He was being wise, and he was being loving, and he was being honest, and all of those things in all of those moments, all of them together, never not any of those things. And so to call him just offensive it's not, it sells him short, and it frames Jesus in a different light than what he actually was. But yeah, definitely offended a lot of people.
So we're trying to just polish off the sharp edges and make them cuddly and cute and a big, teddy bear for the world.
But the opposite reaction, or the opposite tendency, is to do the other, is to swing the pendulum the other way and make it so that he is harsh and, the antithesis to the cute and cuddly and hippie Jesus. And that's also not the answer.
And I think at that point, you've lost the gospel. So I don't have strong opinions about that, just several. No.
And what is the gospel? In regards to this whole conversation, ponder on what the gospel is and where the gospel leads. Why did Jesus come here? What was his mission?
Yeah, I think it's just a neoliberalism that isn't going to change the world. So,
and that's where it is all revealed. Is in that last sentence where he says it's a neoliberalism. It reveals his framing for the entire video, which is unfortunate, but I just wanted to make sure that this isn't a conversation ender or a debate ender. This is something that needs to be talked about, and it needs to be given the credence that it has, to where, yes, like, talking against neoliberalism and that kind, like, that makes sense, that these arguments, if you're talking about that, but that's a whole different subject. That's not universalism. That's neoliberalism. And so it's just a shame that that's getting paired together with this. And yeah, I think this is important. That's the reason I talk about it. And I think the conversation is important. And I think poking at or returning to why we believe what we believe, how we arrived at our conclusions, where in Scripture we can find these things. There's a reason hell is being rethought by a lot of people, because scripturally it's the recent traditions, the past century or two or three or whatever, traditions on the eschaton are just not super founded in scriptures. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff speaking in different directions that has to be grappled with. And so I think the conversation needs to stay open and needs to keep happening. And I don't want to see someone watch this video by Rick and think that it's, a ridiculous ideology, or it's like a clear heresy, like you said at the beginning. It's not. It's something to be grappled with, and it's compelling, and there's some important consequences or fruits from it, from that being your foundation, instead of having eternal conscious torment or even annihilationism as your foundation, as your eschatological foundation. There is consequences to whatever that foundation is, and I see the consequences of that, both in eternal conscious torment and in what would be a healthy, humble, hopeful universalism. Maybe not a confident universalism, but a posture of hope and a posture of love that comes from hopeful universalism. So yeah, I hope this was, not too much of a ramble. Almost an hour, which is 10 minutes less than the first time I tried this. I guess it is what it is. I'll try to cut it down a bit, but I appreciate your time and attention, and I hope that this keeps the conversation going for you, that you lean into it a little more. And if you have any questions for me, let me know, and in the comments or message me, or if you're on the Discord, shoot me a message, and I'd love to chat. Yeah, much love and aloha.